America's foes prepare for monetary jihad. Yeah, that includes George Bush, Jack Snow, the Secretary of the Treasury, Dick Cheney, the Chairman of the Federal Reserve in New York, and the Chairman of Greenspan, and the Chair of the New York Fed. They're all planning a major war on you, on your dollar. Central banks can't count the cost of weak dollars.
My whole thesis is that until you change the way money works, you change nothing. Period.
If you take a dollar bill out of your wallet, or a 20 or 100 or whatever, and you look at it, what does it represent? Money represents the ability to do work.
Our economic paradigm is based upon infinite growth. Or if you're looking on the graph this way, infinite growth. For the past 50 years, there's been a 96% correlation between economic growth, GDP growth, whatever you want to call it, and greenhouse gas emission. You cannot have economic growth without burning more energy. It's simple if you think about it. If Joe Blow wants to open a pizza parlor or a nail salon or whatever, you got to build. So you got to have the trucks drive in, you got to hook up the power, people got to drive their cars, you got to burn electricity. You got to burn energy to get there and use it. Economic growth not possible without energy. So now the need for infinite economic growth set by the economic paradigm is colliding with finite energy. Something's got to give. I didn't come up with this great notion. Matthew Simmons, the world's largest energy investment banker. Clients include the World Bank, Carnegie, Halliburton.
The world economy, the world economic paradigm is based upon fiat currency, basically the United States dollar, but most other currencies are fiat currency. Fractional reserve banking, where a bank can lend between $9 and $15 depending upon their reserve requirements based upon how many dollars they have on deposit. And debt-based growth. You borrow money to grow. That economic paradigm requires infinite growth. Every year, the companies that trade their stock on Wall Street have to report growth or their stocks collapse and the CEOs get fired. Are you aware that GM and Ford bonds have been cut to junk status? The GM's on the brink of bankruptcy? Yeah, well, before you clap, think about the price. If GM, branding has a huge value. The brand name Coca-Cola has enormous value, doesn't it? Whether you like Coke or not. The brand name Nike has enormous value, doesn't it? The brand name United States has enormous value. Do you remember the saying from the 1950s and 60s, what's good for GM is good for America? If GM goes, foreign confidence in this country, we need $2 billion a day in foreign investment to keep this economy from imploding right now. If GM goes bankrupt, you think that, okay, so be careful what you pray for. You just might get it.
The Fed and the Treasury are doing nothing to discourage consumer debt. The U.S. government, Treasury, Federal Reserve doing nothing to stop any of these trends. They're betting on China, and most equity has already moved in. And the first thing everybody says is, why would George Bush and Dick Cheney want to wreck the U.S. economy? Let me ask a rhetorical question. How many people believe that the Great Depression really hurt the Rockefellers? How many people believe that the Great Depression really took wealth away from the richest 1%? The Morgans, the DuPonts. It's exactly right, because the Great Depression was a wealth transfer. It was not a depression, it was a transfer.
The economy's getting ready to collapse, big time, and that's the whole picture for the United States. The trade deficit represents debts and bonds that are like $900 billion, and the stock value is only worth $100 million. That's why the collapse is inevitable.
Capitalism requires people to be quiet souls in the workplace and wild pagans at the cash register.
It's the way money works. It's an economic system, and it's an elite above the White House that is driving this careening car and taking this planet off a cliff.
We are buying everything overseas, and we're not making anything here, and we're getting all of our stuff made there, and it's all money flowing out, and then we borrow the money and we ship it back out, and you guys are in the middle as literally the conduit for this cycle, because you're encouraged to borrow and to spend beyond your means and not save so that you can keep this bubble afloat. And the United States government is literally about to tank and destroy the dollar.
All the big rich money, the money that the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Rockefellers has already moved offshore. It will not be hurt by a collapse in the United States. As a matter of fact, they will make money, and they will achieve several objectives by crashing the U.S. economy, and you'll see that.
The U.S. dollar is the largest reserve currency in the world. It's the way we get all this cheap oil, because we make everybody buy oil in dollars. That's the way oil has been priced. You should know that Saddam Hussein decided to price his oil in euros in, what was it, 2000? Or 1999. And that is probably one of the major reasons why we had to go kick his butt out of there. Foreign central banks are dumping U.S. dollar assets, and that is really significant. It's been the dollar has been the reserve currency for the entire planet for, again, 50 years plus. Oil's been priced in dollars, although people are starting to price it in euros. And you know what Iran's biggest crime is? They're opening an oil bourse, trading in oil futures priced in euros. This year, Iran is going to open an oil futures bourse. That's like a little stock market trading oil in euros.
World is on the brink of ruin. Now I'm talking about your pocketbook and the American economy. Fears for dollars as central banks sell U.S. assets. Central banks around the world have started to dump treasury bills in U.S. dollars. The dollar is going to crash very soon. It actually has been crashing. Now again, the dollar's price has recently risen against the euro, but as you research that, you find that it's not foreign governments buying, it's these banks in the Caribbean, which are using the money, our looted money that's been moved offshore to buy the treasury bills to keep the economy from collapsing right now. I'm convinced the U.S. economy will start to go or go completely in the third or fourth quarter of this year.
The dollar is going in value, but the euro is going, and the Europeans don't like that, because nobody's buying European products. But I think Europe can withstand that, and I think Europe will withstand that. But the central banks holding dollars are declaring losses.
Yeah, but now it's been documented that quietly over the past 2 years, China and India have dumped 13% of their dollar holdings. And it's like a run on the bank. They can't dump them all at once because, the value will tank. They want to sell while they're high and, factor their way out of it. So it's like a game before everything collapses, but it's coming. You can't sell any more gadgets and doodads and but China, on the other hand, and India are huge markets that want all the shit that you got, which is dependent upon oil and energy to produce, to run, to manufacture. So this crash is being planned. It's coming the third or fourth quarter of this year.
The European Central Bank, you can barely see the headline. This just came out like 2 or 3 days ago. European Central Bank to report 2004 budget loss due to dollar drop. All these countries that are holding dollars now are losing money. Thailand is starting to bail out of the dollar. Wobbly dollar spells trouble for central bankers. That's in Australia. China has just authorized 4 of its banks to start selling dollar assets. Mexico has started dumping dollars a little bit. EU to begin trade talks with Iran. Whoa! Europe's going to Iran's rescue now in the middle of the falling dollar crisis.
And European drug dealers will no longer accept the dollar.
Oh, who said that? Who said that? Watch my next slide. Even drug dealers are giving up on the dollar. How many have followed my work for more than 2 years? How did I get my start in this? CIA and drugs, $600 billion a year in drug money flowing through Wall Street. If the dollar gets weak, they aren't going to put their dollars in Wall Street, are they? Because they aren't going to have dollars. Wall Street only trades in dollars.
I really got my start on this with CIA and drugs, showing how $600 billion a year in drug money is laundered through the U.S. financial markets. All the drug dealers of the world have now dumped the dollar, and they're using euros.
The dollar's shrinking in value. Now, I've seen this myself, that, in the days of the major cartels, they didn't count money, they weighed it. They would make pallets of money that would be 1 ton of $100 bills, and they would know plus or minus $1,000 how much it was. Well, now, as the euro gets to 130, 134, it's been as high as 136 to the dollar, and it'll go back up there pretty soon. So if you're smuggling currency, it obviously makes more sense to smuggle euros than dollars, especially since they now have a 200-euro note.
If the drug dealers are playing the dollar, you better believe that the dollar's game is over, because the drug dealers are some of the smartest money men I've ever met in my life. And here it says, right here, it says Euro trash. Drug dealers are, don't give me no more dollars. We don't want your speaking dollars.